one of the very well-known figures of Tanakh is Shimshon. Shimshon HaGibor. He's known for his might, his power. He's known as this invincible man. And he was able to overcome anyone. No one was able to defeat Shimshon. And today I want to discuss the story of Shimshon for numerous reasons. One is because there is a custom during the days of Sfirat HaOmer to learn, since there's 49 days, there's 49 daf pages in Masechet Sotah. And so we learn about, through the Sfirat HaOmer, we learn a daf a day of Masechet Sotah. Interesting that this year it's also, the daf yomi falls out about a week off, but it's also the same time. And so in Masechet Sotah there's a whole discussion about Shimshon. And it's very apropos. Actually in our parasha this week, it's all about how to be a kadosh, how to be holy. And although that's not per se our parasha, that's Parshas Nosei, but there is a discussion on how you become a kadosh, which is, how do you become holy? One of the ways to do so is by being a nazir. A nazir means someone who doesn't drink wine and doesn't get contaminated with dead people, even though only a kohen has that issue. But he also refrains from it. And one of the things that he does, and that was probably Shimshon's trademark, was his hair. He grows long hair. He never cuts his hair. Now there's a whole discussion in halacha how you do it. And Nazir Olam, can he cut his hair every 30 days, etc.? But we won't go into those details. Let's just jump into the story of Shimshon and primarily focus on Shimshon's hair today. So it's a conversation about Shimshon and very related to hair, because Shimshon's story is all about hair. The beginning and the end is all about the hair. So, just an overview of the story. What happened was, the Jews were being oppressed by the Plishtim, Palestinians, and they were causing havoc, and they didn't know what to do. So, in those times, through the whole Sefer Shoftim, the whole book of Judges, you have all these stories about the Jews being oppressed, and then they succumb and they fall, and then something happens, and the Hashem comes and saves them, and it comes about through a shofet, through a judge, someone out there who brings the Jews back to Teshuvah. They come back to Hashem, and everything switches. Such is the story of Shimshon. The story begins with a woman whose name we are not told, although it's described in Chazal, an interesting name, but anyway, she's known as the wife of Manoach. And so she's once out in the field and she finds and meets an angel, and the angel tells her about having a child, and then she goes and tells her husband, and he doesn't believe it, and he's whatever, and then the husband comes off to the wife and he says, next time just tell him I want to also speak to him. So he comes again, and Manoach follows him, and the Malach tells them, you're going to have a child, he's going to save the Jewish people. The child's power is Nazir Elokim Miyana Mina Beten. He has to be a Nazir from when he's born. And therefore, don't touch wine, etc. And he has to grow his hair long. And so this becomes the mission of Shimshon. So Shimshon is born to this barren couple who never had a baby ever. And finally they have this baby. And he's born. And he's clearly very different to everybody else. And Shimshon's hair is let to grow. One day, young Shimshon grows up and comes home, and he tells his parents that he has this woman that he wants to marry. And they're very upset, very upset. And this story needs a whole discussion on its own. We're not going to go that route today, but she's a Plishti woman. And he wants her. And so they go out, and presumably every woman that Shimshon married was actually converted. And he goes out, and the first story of Shimshon is that, at the party, at the feast, the wedding feast, so he tells his friends a riddle, and they can't figure out the riddle. In the end, they figure it out by conning the wife, and she is able to reveal it to them, and so they get the riddle. And Shimshon's very upset, and a whole story ensues over there. And then a second time, Shimshon has another woman, and that time he also gets upset. And this time he goes to the Plishtim, and he says he takes 300 foxes, and he ties their tails together to each other, and then he puts a torch, and he lights, by the tails, he lights the torch. And so the fox on fire, and so they're chasing after each other, but they're tied to each other, and so they go and burn down all the Plishtim fields. So Shimshon had a field day with yeah, burning it all down. And then there's a bunch of other stories where Shimshon's might and power is always there. And the Gemara puts it this way. The Mishnah first says that Shimshon alach achar einav, lefikach nikru plishtim et einav. Shimshon ended up having his eyes poked out by the Plishtim. And the reason was because he followed his eyes. That's the Mishnah. The Gemara explains, what does it mean he followed his eyes? It means that Shimshon be'inav barad, it says, Vayomer Shimshon el aviv, ota kach li leisha, ota kach li ki hi ashra be'inai. I want her, I want to marry her. That's the first woman that he married, because she is fitting in my eyes, is the idea. So he followed his eyes. That's why at the end, lefikach nikru plishtim et einav. The end of the story was that he met a woman, her name was Delilah. This woman, Delilah, she came to Shimshon and she said, I want to know what your power is. You have this incredible power. Tell me, what is your strength? And he lied to her. And every time he told her, like, yeah, if you what's it called? You tie my hair with 7 knots and braids, and then, my power will cease. So she tried it out. She tied it, and then she said, "Place him here," and he just jumps up, and the whole thing's gone. And she tried a bunch of options, and every time he told her a lie, and she realized it wasn't working. So finally, she seduced him and conned him, and she was the one who got through to him, and he told her. And when he told her, she knew that that was the truth. And he said, my power is in my hair. My power is Nazir Elokim Ani. I'm a Nazir to Hashem. I don't cut my hair. And as soon as she said that, he said that, she got that was the truth. And she told the Plishtim, she says, this time it's going to work. And they came in, and while he was sleeping, she cut off his hair. And then she says, Plishtim alecha Shimshon, they're coming here. And he gets up with all his might, and he's stuck. And he couldn't do it. And so they took him, and they put him in a prison, and they locked him up, and they treated him, they humiliated him, they treated him horribly, and they poked out his eyes. So he was pretty helpless. And then, and he was in prison. While he was there, so one day they were trying to show off their guards. And, look what we achieved. So all the Plishtim were on top of on the roof. And they brought out Shimshon as an exhibit A, because this guy had caused them all the damage. And Shimshon at that time, meantime, had grown his hair again in prison while he was locked up. And so his power was back. And he asked the boy who was leading him, like he was this helpless guy. And he was, humiliated and disgraced. And he asked this guy, he said, just put me let me lean against the wall. And he figured while he was blind, that wall is, that this pillar is holding up the whole building. And Shimshon davened to Hashem, and he says, let me get revenge for one of my eyes, the other one in Olam Haba. And he pulled down the pillar, and he was able to destroy more Plishtim in his death than in his life put together. He had never accomplished as much as he did, but in that point, the building fell on him, and he died. And that's the story of Shimshon. Question really is, what was it about Delilah how was she able to get the information out of him? How did she succeed? And why indeed was it the hair that was the source of his strength? So we want to understand, what is it about the hair that causes the strength? But first, Delilah, the same Gemara says, this is in Sotah Daf Tet. So the Gemara says about Delilah, why was she named Delilah. So it says, in Malelo Nikrashma Delilah, if Delilah wasn't her name, Re'uya ita, it should have been her name. So I don't know if it was her name or not, but her name should have been Delilah. Either way. Why? Because Dildela, she ledalel is right, to bring down, to dilute. Dildela et kochol, dildela et libo, dildela et maasav. Because of her, he lost his strength, he lost his heart, and he lost his action. And the Gemara says, how did Delilah know that when he told her about the hair, that was the truth? She says, it says, Vatered Delilah ki gidla et kol libo. She knew that he told her everything. How did she know? Because Mino Yoda, so Rab Chanin says, Nikarin divrei emet. You can tell when someone tells the truth. And she understood, that's the truth. Abaya says, a fascinating answer. She says, Yad'a bo bo'to tzadik de lo mapik shem shamayim levatala. She knew you'd never say the name of Hashem in vain. And he said, Nazir Elokim ani. As soon as he said, Nazir Elokim, she got it. She associated that when he talks about his hair, he talks about Hashem. And there she knew that that was the power of Hashem. Right. How did she get it out of him? So the Gemara says, Vate'altzeu, she coerced him, she forced him. How? Says Rabbi Yitzchak, Bishat Gemar Biyah Nishmeta mitachtav. They were finishing the act of intercourse and she pulled away. And she's like, you want to continue? That's what you got to do. And this is an interesting story because what does that mean? That she somehow had this power over him. How did she get that power? So Shimshon becomes a really fascinating personality. The strength that he has is divine. It's clearly divine. In fact, the Gemara itself says that why was he named Shimshon? Al Shem. He was named Shimshon because he was like the sun. Shimshon is the Shemesh. It's the sun. And so the sun is Shemesh Umagen Hashem Elokim. The sun is the power of the divine. And so the Shimshon carries in him the power of Hashem is what he carries in him. And then the whole time he had this divine strength. It was real power. And then when she was able to take the power away from him, so when he's in prison, what do? Very harsh Gemara there. It says that Vayhi tochen beveit ha'asurim. He was a grinder. He was made to grind. And the Gemara doesn't mean to make to ground. Well, you assume that ground means to grind means to do hard work in prison. But he says that actually it means something totally different. The word titchan, to grind, is a euphemism. Because Iyov says, titchan le'acher ishti. My wife should grind for someone else. And what he's talking about grinding is the act of relations between a man and a woman. It's a euphemism. And so what they did was, the Gemara says, that en tchina la lashon aveira. Tchina means the aveira. מלמד שכל אחד ואחד הביא לו את אשתו לבית האסורים כדי שתתעבר הימנו. They brought their wives over because they wanted to have Shimshon-like children. So they wanted to have Plishtim with that strength, and that's what they did to him in prison. And so, yes, you're understanding.
She needs a hug.
It's a real story. It's got a lot of intensity to it. And it requires us to really understand what is going on with Shimshon. Because on the one hand, he's a divine person. He's this holy, holy person who's named for the name of Hashem. And everything about him is divine. In fact, what's fascinating is when Shimshon is about to die, and he's bringing the whole building down with thousands of Plishtim and the leadership of the Plishtim on him. So he turns to Hashem and he says to him as follows. He says, Zachreinina v'chaskeinina chapa'am hazeh. Remember me and strengthen me just this time, and I should be able to take revenge for one of my eyes. What did he say? He says, Rav, אמר שמשון לפני הקדוש ברוך הוא, ריבונו של עולם, master of the universe, זכור לי 20 שנה, remember for me the 20 years ששפטתי את ישראל. I was a judge for 20 years. And during that time, לא אמרתי לאחד מהם, עבר לי מקל ממקום למקום. I never asked anyone to do anything for me. Never did I ask someone bring me a stick from one place to another. I was completely and utterly selfless. I took nothing from anyone. I did everything I did. Everything I did was all absolutely and utterly selfless. And here you have it, that same idea. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shimshon al shmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu nikra. Shimshon is named for Hashem. Because it says, Shemesh u'magen Hashem Elokim. And therefore there's even a question of whether you're allowed to erase the name of Shimshon. Can you write the name Shimshon down and erase it or not? That's the question over there. So, Shimshon had this incredible might and incredible power. Why is it that the might of Shimshon is in the hair? Why is it that when you express the name of Hashem, you express it in the hair? And if we understand that, we can move into the next step to understand how was she able to get it out of him. So let's move to a discussion on hair. It's interesting in Judaism, hair is very, very important in Judaism, and in opposite ways. Like, on the one hand, some hair is forbidden hair. For example, a Levi in the Beis HaMikdash, the Leviim, had to shave completely. They had no hair in their body at all, which was one of the reasons why Korach was really, really upset and jealous of Aharon HaKohen, because Korach was a Levi and Aaron was a Kohen, and the Kohen had Aaron HaKohen, which says Zakana Aaron sheored al pi midotav. Aaron had a long beard, and Korach said, I look bald all over and funny. And so he insisted on having hair. The hair bothered him a lot. And then we have hair of a woman, which is supposed to be covered. Se'ar be'isha erva. And she meant to cover her hair. So the question is, hey, how does that come about? But on the other hand, a Nazir is supposed to have hair. So sometimes you're meant to have long hair and make your decision. Is it good to have hair or not good to have hair? And then there's the hair of a beard, which is, well, certainly in halachas, even those who permit cutting it, it's a question of how are you allowed to cut it, right? And there's no question about it that, like, when you picture Moshe Rabbeinu, you picture him most likely with a beard. It's very difficult to picture him as a clean-shaven guy. And so there's and by Aaron it says, right, Zakan Aaron sheored al pi midotav. That's a pasuk. So clearly he had a beard, but so there's halachas of how to shave a beard, and according to the Tzemach Tzedek, for example, even trimming a beard is forbidden, because the Isra is lo yilbash gever sim like isha. A man can't look like a woman. So there's different opinions about it, but certainly there's a kedusha. The Zohar calls it Yud Gimel Tikunei Dikna. It's the 13 attributes of Midat HaRachamim, that when you have a beard, it elicits the power of Rachamim, of mercy, of compassion of Hashem, which comes about down to you. So, what's with hair? Good or bad? Sometimes it's a must, sometimes not. Like in Sfiras HaOmer, you can't cut your hair, right? It's like Sfirat HaOmer. It's not supposed to have haircuts. We're very into hair. Hair represents something very important. Daniel, Sefer Daniel, which is written very much, a lot of it in Aramaic, says the following pasuk. He says, Atik, this is the pasuk, Atik Yoimin Yosiv, the Ancient One of Days sat down, Use'ar Reishei, and the hair of his head, Ke'amar Nekei, like the wool of a sheep. Hashem's Atikim, in the Ancient One of Days, sat down, and he's got hair on his head like a sheep. And, well, you know, it says, there's a pasuk which says, Salsela uterei memeko. And the rabbis didn't know what the word salsela means. Terei memeko means it'll elevate you. Then they learned a lot of things from Rebbe had a maid, and she taught them a lot of stuff. She taught the rabbis a lot of stuff. Rebbe's shifcha, Rebbe's maid. And they saw her once talking to someone, and she said, Ad matay ata mesalsel b'sa'arotecha? How long are you going to be? He was tangling his hair, untangling, twirling it. So they understood that the word salsala means to untangle. So hair needs to be untangled, brushed. What do you do with hair? You brush the hair so that it should look good, untangled, right? So what's salsala? It's to untangle. What's hair? Let's understand the depth of what Daniel is saying about hair. Hair is the most amazing and incredible part of your body. Actually, hair and nails, I'll tell you why hair is different. What happens is, it's the part of your body that's absolutely dead. No life. It's so dead that you go for a haircut. Take a kid for the haircut the first time. What are you, cutting me? But you can cut the hair and nothing happens. Fascinating. Because if you leave your hair at the scene of a crime, you will be found. Wow. In other words, when you go to a barber and there's hair all over, actually it looks the same. Just hair, different colors, different whatever, but it's the same thing. It's not. If you had to look at it under a microscope, you would discover that each one of it has very unique DNA. You can actually be discovered through your hair. Your hair has the very essence of who you are embodied and embedded in it. So isn't it fascinating that your hair is not you, but it is you? Is it you or is it not you? Why is hair more interesting than any other part of the body? Because every limb of yours, the internal limbs, your heart, your kidneys, your stomach, or the external limbs like your hands and your fingers and your toes, they're clearly part of you. They're clearly alive. You can see they are alive and you must take care of them. But your hair is very much dead. There is no life in your hair. But it's so alive. People are so into their hair. Make the hair look this way, that way. Your hair basically gives you your expression of who you are. It's quite fascinating. But it's a dead part of the body. Now, nails are the same thing, really. You can cut them and do whatever you want. But I think the difference between hair and nails is that nails, it's very clear which is, there's like, it's a nail. You're cutting the nail. With hair, it's like a whole bunch of them. There are follicles galore all over your body, actually. And on your head, certainly, and they're like entangled into each other. Or so it seems. Actually, every single hair has a strand and comes from a certain place and is very, very clear on who he or she is. I'm this hair, I come from that follicle, and that's who I am. And inside me, every single hair looks like just a hair. It's actually hollow. And inside the hair, it draws down the brain. The power of the brain comes in it.
Draws down the brain?
The brain is inside the hair. A brain chip in every single hair. And it makes it grow, and it makes it grow a certain way, and it tells me everything about you, even after it's cut off from the body.
Wow.
And so what Daniel is saying is this. Let's use the hair. Let's use the hair as a mashal, an analogy. What's the analogy of hair? It's the analogy of Hashem's powerful energy in this world. Now there are upper worlds, very spiritual world, and those spiritual worlds have angels, malachim, neshamas, that are up there. And they appreciate and understand and connect and get what is Hashem and what is the divine. They understand it, they appreciate it, they relate to it. They're like the limbs of the body. Then what Hashem wants to do is, he's like, I'm going to try something fascinating. I want to go down to a place which is absolutely, totally, and utterly void of divine energy. And in that space, I want to be revealed. That's what hair is. So, in Tehillim it says, Usvivav nis'ara me'od. You know what that means? What's nis'ara? Se'ara is a storm. Around Hashem is a big storm. But Nisara is interesting. It's very hairy around him. We interchange Samach and Sin all the time. Usvivav Nisara me'od, actually it's spelled with a sin. In the Pasuk it's spelled with a sin. So we translate it as storm, but it means both. What Hashem does, and that's the storm is the hair. What he does is, think about your brain. Your brain is in your head. That's where most of the hair is. So the highest part of the body is the brain, and the lowest part of the body is the hair, and they're right next to each other. The hair is outgrowth of the brain. It's when the brain power ceases to be. In a certain sense, the hair contains the ultimate power of the brain. I'll explain to you why. Imagine a very holy person walks into the room. The example would be Rabbah, or some say it was Rava. And he's an Amoira in the Gemara. And he's a very, very holy personality. And he's also very intellectual. And he comes into the room and he starts explaining things to us. You know what we're going to look at? We're going to say, I don't know what you're saying. I don't understand. You're up there and I don't get it. Sorry. I don't know what you're saying. So he had a system. What Rabbi would do is, he would walk into the room, and every time he started teaching his students, he would begin with a joke or something lighthearted. If you see Rabbi walking into the room and telling you a joke, you know what everyone's doing? They're listening. If he walks in and starts, okay, let's talk about, and right away he starts to the shir, it's like, whoa, I already spaced out. So he would walk into the room and he would tell jokes. And when you tell a joke, everybody's listening. Wow. And that's how he would begin every single shir. He would start with a joke and the rabbis would laugh. They were very excited. Everyone wanted to hear him. What was amazing about those jokes is that they weren't jokes. Actually, they embodied and they contained inside them the entire lesson that he was about to teach. So he was spectacular. His genius was his ability to bring down the idea, put it into a joke, and then communicate it. And that's like packaging the material and giving it over. We do today a similar thing when you tell a mashal, an analogy. So you're giving an analogy for something. What you're trying to do is express it down. You're bringing down the concept so that the person can get it. Because if you talk about the actual thing, they won't get it. In fact, in case you didn't notice, we're doing it right now. We're talking about a story about Shimshon, because a Shimshon is a story, it's interesting, you want to listen, right? And then we're talking about an analogy of hair, but really what we're talking about is something much deeper. And we want to access that. So far, hopefully everyone understands what Shimshon is, good story, and everyone understands what hair is. That's a good analogy too. Now we are unpacking what the analogy is about. The mashal has a nimshal in it, and what you want to do is be able to find that nimshal. And you want to be able to find the divine energy in it. So if you think about it, usvivav nisara me'od, around Hashem is very hairy. What does Hashem do? This world is all hair. Hair are these little strands of things that happen, and they contain in them divine energy. Every experience in life, every moment, everything that happens to you has divine energy in it. But you can't see it. All you see is hair. What's the hair? A dead, disconnected part of the body. Imagine you're on the floor by the barber, and you see the hair. Okay, I see the hair. What is that? Hair. But if you care to really delve into that hair, you'll discover a whole human being and all his DNA, and you'll know everything about him, like the FBI would do, if they had to. They want to find out everything about the hair. You want to be that detective, trying to find what's inside the hair. So think about it this way. Life is just hair. Very hairy. There is divine energy everywhere, but you don't see it anyway. And so what you want to do is unpack the divine energy. Yesterday I woke up in the morning and I looked, in a certain kind of a mood, And when I got to my phone, which wasn't that long after I woke up, long enough, but I opened up. That was actually a good one that morning. And I opened up, and there was a video of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And you should watch it. Amazing little scene, a 1-minute clip. What it was there was a group called Machne Israel. So it was like a club. I think you had to give $100,000 back then. And if you donated $100,000, you got to have a one-on-one audience. And the audience, I guess they're getting permission from the people, and it's recorded. So the guy comes in, and he asks the question. He says, my business, the Rebbe asks him, you wrote to me about the product that you put out, a new product. How's the new product going? And he says, yeah, we need PR, we need publicity. It's okay, what's wrong with that? So, well, we need money for publicity, and we don't have the money. So he's like, what should I do? And they skip a part, which is clearly when he was being given an answer of what to do with his business, actual practical advice. Then they go back, and you watch the Rebbe's answer. And he says to him, so basically what do you have? You have a product, you're trying to get it out, and it's not working. So, what do? You need the heavens to open and something to come down. Somehow you need to find the funding for it. And somehow the product needs to go out so that the business actually thrives. He says, what you need is a dose of bitachon, of absolute trust in Hashem. And he says, wow. And he tells him, it's not what I'm saying. It says it in the Torah. It says it in Sfarim. You should learn a book called Chovot HaLevavot, Duties of the Heart, specifically Shara Bitachon. In that book, in Shara Bitachon, he says it explains that if a person, it downloads to you. It's not when you learn it, you know it. When you learn it, you actually feel it. Hashem's presence in your life. And you'll start to notice that things are amazing. And through your doing that, that brings down the actual energy. Your feeling Hashem's presence and you're letting go and realizing Hashem in your life, basically relax in Hashem's presence. Obviously, if you weren't stressed, you wouldn't need to relax. You need to relax when you're stressed. He says, relax into Hashem's presence, and then you'll just see it everywhere. You'll see miracles all over. To the point that you won't need the bitachon because you'll have the cash. That's what he tells me. And I was looking at that experience, I'm saying, you see the hair? There's a strand of energy in this Jew's life. He's got a business, he's trying to make it work, something's not working, he needs the cash flow. And so he's saying to him, great, what you need to do is find the DNA in the strand of hair. And Hashem wants you to participate. And the way you do that is by noticing God's power in your life and by ceding control and realizing that I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to make business. I know how to open a product and run it and whatever. And then what? And then I need Hashem to rain down on my product and make it work. And when you notice that, that is the life that enters into the hair. So the analogy is that the angels are not living in a hairy space because they see God. We don't see Hashem. Like the hair, we don't notice the body. You have to work hard to discover the life inside the hair. That's the physical world we live in. And that's what Daniel is saying. He says, Atik Yomin Yasiv, the ancient one, the hair of his head is like the wool of a sheep. You have to look all the way down in this world where you see the hair, and there you will discover the divine. How do you get there? Salsala utere memeka. You have to comb the hair. You have to untangle it. You have to look around at everything that transpires in the world and everything that transpires in your life and untangle it. It means to notice constantly how Hashem is with you, to relax into that space. We're very tense. You know why we're tense? All our negative emotions, where do they happen? In not being able to relax into God's embrace and love. Hashem's like, I'm with you, I got you. That's when you're in the space of grief and worry and sadness and all the feelings that happen in our lives. What is it? It's just a hair. And when you're able to let go and say, okay, this is not what, it's not comfortable, but I don't feel God. I wish I did, but say to Hashem, I'm very disappointed, I'm very sad, I'm grieving, but I'm going to relax in your presence and know that you're my loving, embracing, caring Father in heaven, and I'm going to notice you every step of the way. And you do it every time you need to make a business deal, every time you worry, every time. It's thousands of times every single day you'll discover it. That's called untangling the hair. Salsila. If you untangle it, uterei memeko, it will uplift you. Shimshon was brought down to this world. And what is Shimshon? He's named for the sun. Because actually he is a person who had a tremendous, incredible strength. What was his real inner strength? His real inner strength was his ability to not flinch from what happens in the world. What does it say in Pirkei Avot this week? Ezehu gibor hakovesh et yitzro. Real gvura is your ability to conquer not outside forces, inside forces. It's really tough. And you're really strong and mighty and incredible if you're able to do that. That's Shimshon's true inner strength. Because in as much as his story is the story of brute force, his ability to, right, the Gemara says that Amr Rab Shimon Echasid, Bein Kteifav Shel Shimshon Shishim Amma. I don't know what this means, but it says that between his shoulders was 60 Amma. An amma is a foot and a half. So he had 60 of them, shoulder to shoulder. And then it says he grabs the doors of Azza and he pulls them and he picks up the gates of Azza together with the whole. They locked him in basically. He picked the whole thing up and just took it away.
But his strength also was in believing in God and doing
Yes.
it for right reasons.
So I'm saying time and again,
It wasn't just
exactly. Time and again it seems that what's his real strength, the brute strength. In fact, when the story of Shimshon is told, we talk about the brute strength. Really, what was Shimshon's strength? Nobody understood. And that was what bothered Leila. Why are you so strong? How do you do this? And he said, I'll tell you how I do it. In the end, he told her. Exactly.
now go
My power lies that when I was born, the angel came to my mother and my father afterwards also, and he said, this child needs to have long hair and he needs to recognize Hashem in his hair. And what does that mean? You will notice it in your life all the time. We're not Shimshons, but you notice your strength. You want to know what your strength is? Your incredible, powerful strength. Did you ever see when you have a child or someone comes to you and they are like jumping all over because they're all over the place and they're really, really, really frustrated and upset and mad, and it's at you. And what you want to do is not take it personally. And it's very hard because it looks very personal. And you want to notice in that experience that no, I am bound to Hashem. I know myself. I'm attaching myself, connecting myself to Hashem. It's like a deep breath. That was tough. And then you take, I'm good. That's how you do Shalom Bais. When you realize that the other person, a wife who comes home and she's just stressed out, is stressed out. Help her. She's not angry at you. She's just stressed. Okay. It's your ability to find Hashem in every single strand of hair. It is so hard. But that's what you want to do. You want to be able to notice that there's holy hair. That's why some hair is forbidden hair. It's like, are you allowed to tell jokes? If you tell jokes, you could very easily slip into a slippery slope of becoming a jokester, of becoming a laughing stock, a leitzan, a clown. If you talk nonsensical words all the time, it's very easy to fall. That's what happens to us nowadays. But sichat chulin shel talmidei chachamim tzricha limud. When a scholar, a Talmid Chacham, speaks, pay careful attention. What you'll discover is that there's more Torah to be learned in his idle chatter than there is in his actual Torah learning. Because when he's teaching Torah, he's in Torah mode. But when he's in idle chatter mode or joke mode, it's much deeper stuff. That's how Rabbi did it. He would tell a joke. The power lies in the joke. In a sense, the hair contains more of the divine, of the energy, of the soul, of the body, than the limbs. Because the hair is a proof that I could not be attached, and I'm still attached. Wow, that's real life. Hashem empowered us in this world in an incredible way. We have more power than the angels. Because the angels, they just sense divine energy. We don't. We live in the hairy part. We live in the place. We live in the part that you don't see Hashem. And we know that se'ar be'isha erva, to look at the hair, could be considered to be erva, places you're not allowed to look. So, looking at the hair in a different kind of a way, which means looking at the world and not sensing divine energy, is very dangerous. It'll stress you out. And what you want to do is, some hair needs to be covered, some hair needs to be shaven depending on the situation. Some hair needs to be grown long. When you're in a holy space, like a Nazir or like the beard, that's the same idea, and you're drawing Hashem's energy into it. So what Shimshon was doing his whole life was accomplishing the impossible. You know, the story of Shimshon it's a tough one, because you're not allowed to marry out. Sorry. That's a good question. You're not allowed. But somehow what he was doing, he was going out, and he was all about divine energy. So what it says is that his parents didn't know. Here's the Gemara. His father and mother didn't know, that's the pasuk, that everything he did direct from God. He never had a desire just to somehow find females, certainly not Plishti females. His goal was totally and utterly, every step of the way, divine. And we can't even understand that story. Like, it's almost like difficult for us. It's a cynical story. Like, really? Seriously? It sounds very sarcastic. But if you look at the story of Shimshon for what it is, it's a story that happens to each one of us in our lives. We fall. Looking back at what happens, you're like, oh, it was really Hashem. Nothing ever happens to you that is not orchestrated by Hashem. Ever. Including all the dumb mistakes, silly errors that you made in your life. They're all divine. Except that Shimshon was able to see them in foresight, not in hindsight. And so he was able to find Hashem's presence in every single experience. And that's how he drew his might internally. Just like a person who's absolutely in control of themselves. You'll see it in yourself. We're not absolutely in control. But you'll notice that the more control you have, the more power you have. People always gravitate towards that person who's in the light, who's just a presence. And if a parent can stand that and can be this anchor for their child, or a boss or a manager or a leader to their followers, if you can do that, people will follow you because they like that sense of security. That's what Shimshon was able to give everywhere. And because of that, he had absolutely divine energy that nobody else had. So it expressed itself in his brute force outside. Now what happened? Dlila. Dlila symbolizes the ultimate of the klippa. So Shimshon faced, the klippa is the shell, the negative forces in the world, the negative energy.
Does that
come from the heart? Is that like somebody that just follows
Yes.
their heart instead of mind?
So to us, it's in your heart, and you will be attacked all the time. You'll never have
He had mind over heart.
You'll never have a day of serenity in your life because Hashem created us to struggle. Life is a struggle. And constantly you'll be like, okay, it's Hashem. Then the next step comes along, and the next one, and the next screen, and you get good at it. But then came the ultimate challenge. And it came to him in the form of this person called Lila, she was like the embodiment of the Satan coming to attack him. And what she successfully did was she tried to draw it out of him, it didn't work. And then she got him into this moment where it was like, okay, and he was the whole time focusing on his divine energy, and no, this is Hashem, it's from Hashem, it's from Hashem. And she was like, look at me as me. And for one moment, he slipped. It was the most difficult moment of his life. It was a second, it was a one split second slip. Because the whole time he was like noticing divine energy, and then she pulled him in that exact moment when he was at the peak of, okay, it's all Hashem, and then she was able to pull him away. How exactly, I don't know how to tell you. But what she did was, she drew him away from his relationship with Hashem for a second, and then he told her. She distracted him. Exactly.
He lost his power.
And then for that second, he couldn't control himself.
You mean when,
And that was the moment that he lost it.
when he revealed about the hair?
Yes. And so he told her the truth.
But why did he go to her in the first place?
He was trying to bring Hashem's energy down further and further and further. And he was just having more and more challenges in life. That's how you and I have also. Hashem leads us. Hashem leads you into all different spaces. The Gemara actually says that if you really want to follow, it actually happened long before. The Gemara says, the Mishnah is, Shimshon be'einav bara. The Gemara says he followed his eyes.
Right.
So here's what it says. The first woman that he found, it says, Vayomer Shimshon el aviv otakach li leisha. Otakach li ki hi yashra be'inai. I want to marry her. And the Gemara says that's why the Plishtim were able to poke out his eyes. Because he followed his eyes. Then the Gemara says, what do you mean? It's not true. Everything he did was divine. So it says, yeah, Hashem was orchestrating it, but on some deep, deep, deep level right there, he still followed his eyes. Because he was on the most slippery slope ever known to any human being. He was doing things that are like, what? And he was trying to follow the divine. But on some deep, perhaps subconscious level, he was following his eyes. And so at the end, after the story with Lila, what happened was, his punishment was, midah keneged midah. They poked out his eyes. His eyes is his ability to see things. Because of his long hair, he was able to see divine energy everywhere, in everything. And he followed God in every step of the way. And the Plishtim realized that, and they poked out his eyes. Because his physical eyes were an expression of his spiritual eyes. Like we say, the expression is your mind's eye. He used his mind's eye to see God's energy everywhere. And the Plishtim said, let's block you. And so they were able to cut off his hair. And they were able to detach him. And what they didn't realize was that you got to keep cutting his hair. And so in as much as his eyes couldn't see anymore, inside him he regained. Why didn't they know about the hair? They should have known. They knew it was the hair that was the issue.
Yeah.
They were told that, so why didn't they cut the hair again and keep on cutting it? Because even though he had lost his external eyesight, and he was forced into these spaces whereby that whole story with what they did, bringing the women in, that's how the world attacked the Shimshon. That was what he was into. And so now they used his powers for external forces, but he was able to regain the internal ability to find Hashem. And so in the last moment of his life, he's able to draw all the energy down, and he says to Hashem, okay, let me take revenge for one of my eyes. The next one is Olam Haba.
Yeah.
But this one, my ability to see Hashem inside, I see Echad. Achat Me'inai is my ability to see Achat, to see Hashem. And so he was able to regain his powerful ability to find the divine inside that moment,
His strength was to overpower
his own self. And as soon as he was able to do the internal work, his external energy came back, and so he was able to bring down that whole building. And it is a very important and powerful message to us, because a Nazir is called Kadosh, and we're all about being Kadoshim. What does it mean to be a Kadosh? You think that a Kadosh means someone who goes to a mountain in Tibet and removes himself from the world and stays there, or goes to Meir Sharim and locks himself up, and that's it. I'm in the Torah world all the time. Good luck, because even if you go there and try it, you still got to pay your bills. And living in Yerushalayim today is probably the most expensive real estate. And you might discover you need a lot of money. Then you have kids and a lot of stuff going on. And what happens in the world today is we need strength, inner strength, a lot of it. And Hashem did not. Hashem put us into the world, into the hairy space of the world. He said, if I wanted you to be angels, I'd make you angels. So what I want is that you should go out into the hairy space, and there you'll discover the greatest power and the greatest might you ever had. But what you need is to do the internal work. And the internal work is constantly bring yourself to that space of I see Hashem, I see the divine, I see the power of God in my life. And if you constantly see it, then you don't have the Delilah in your life. Delilah is the Yetzirah, Shedil Delayit Libo, Dil Delayit Kochol, Dil Delayit Masav. Delilah is the one who weakens you. It says, nah, you can't do this. And you become a Shimshon. And you keep on going back, I see Hashem in this space. And it's in the moment. You lose it. No. That's a hair, I get it. It's a hair, I don't see God. That space is the most divine space ever. And it's sacred. And when you discover God, your life.
Don't there are words to break. Amazing. You know, like, you touch me before, like amazing.